We're ready to call this meeting to order. All right. Thank everyone for being here, and we're ready to get started.
The first item on the agenda is the presentation of the fourth quarter ending December 31, 2022, investment reports for the 1945 and 49 pension plans, along with the 2023 update. Ms. Heather Siegler, Morgan Stanley.
Good day, Ms. Siegler. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Yes, sir. Let's see here. Put this out. How do I get to my presentation, Tim? Oh, no, it's there. There we go. Good. Thank you. Okay, sorry, I want to get on the same page. So everyone should have a copy of my presentation. If not, it's referenced above. And we're going to go through and talk about the fourth quarter of last year and then an update through the first month of the year so far for 2023. I think to say that the past year was challenging is probably the understatement of the year. It's challenging for both equities and bonds, but the S&P 500 fell 18.1%, the worst performance that we've had since the great financial crisis of 2008. However, the year ended somewhat on a positive note, with the last quarter being positive 7.5%. The key theme through the fourth quarter of the year was really largely the same as it's been the last three quarters I'd been here throughout last year. Investors were really focused on the Federal Reserve and whether they would stop raising interest rates, when that would happen, and whether the economy would enter a recession. When we think about where we were last year and we look back, we had midterm elections, the ongoing war with Ukraine, the China's zero COVID policy, and the impact that it had on global growth, as well as the factors that really influenced the stock market. A majority of the question really resounded around the Fed and where they would go for last year. The question of when the Fed will stop hiking still has yet to be answered, and will we enter a recession? That is yet to be seen as well. The data has really looked more recently as we may be able to just skate by without going into recession. Obviously, that's data dependent and will change as we go through the year. But throughout the quarter, the Fed really remained, just steadfast that interest rates would continue to remain higher for longer, trying to do their best they could to tame inflation. And so the Fed raised interest rates 75 basis points in November and then another 50 basis points in December, which took it for the full year up 4.25%. When we think about the bond market overall, as well as the stock markets, they were really pricing in rate cuts towards the end of this coming year. Some forecasters were showing rate cuts as early as the end of 2023, the beginning of 2024. And Fed rate cuts are really driven by, hopefully, what we thought would be a weaker economy that will be bringing inflation numbers down, and thus the recession view for later in the year. The Fed, as they've been aiming to really cool those inflation rates and hopefully entering in that soft landing and avoiding sending the economy into a recession. A lot of that data that that has been supporting the Fed pausing in their tightening cycle sooner than later has really shown a little bit of easing, particularly in the fourth quarter. We look at inflation, the numbers were down when we saw from earlier this year 7.1% and higher on through last year, but last quarter from 7.1 to 6.5 in November, still ahead of the Fed's target rate of inflation of 2%. That target number is obviously something that we're hoping that we get to. We don't think that's going to happen in 2023. When we look at inflation overall, the inflation items that we have felt have really been housing, clothing, healthcare, that all those have remained elevated, and then goods outside of the food and energy as well. Food and energy actually fell. And so the job market has remained strong, and that we do believe that it's likely above where the Fed has been targeting it. And so in December, the economy actually added 223,000 jobs, which was above the forecast of 203,000, which capped a record year for hiring in the U.S. When we look over, throughout the year, and it seems it kind of affected the market overall, the midterm elections we think that they had minimal impact on the stock market overall. The so-called red wave that everyone expected did not materialize. But that did mean that Republicans did take control of the House, and for the stock market, that normally is a good sign for us because it means that the ideas that get passed are the best ideas. And that just means that we get, every time we have a Congress that's split, we actually think that's a positive for the market. When we had corporate earnings, corporate profits grew again in the third quarter, and that was really driven by the pricing actions to offset inflation. However, we do expect that outlooks for 2023 for corporate profits will start to be reduced as we go into the really what we thought would be the first quarter, but now we're seeing that's probably going to be more into the second quarter. We've seen some companies that have reduced expectations for 23, but we think for the market to respond to the numbers that we've seen, really need to have that come down a little bit more, have a little more pushback there. And then looking forward, we remain for this year cautiously optimistic on the outlook for the equity markets. While a recession is hopefully is likely, but we're hoping it's not as deep as we've seen in the past. We're hoping that this is a shallow and short recession if we do seem to move into that, and that the odds that have increased a little bit more towards this since we were looking at this last summer. So economic data is slowly moving to the Fed's desired target direction, and so we'll have to see how that plays out as far as the economic data and then interest rates. We do think that we had one more interest rate increase since the end of the quarter. You'll see that really factored into the update, but that happened in February, and the market right now is expecting another raise in interest rates in March and again in June. If you look at the page I've put before you, this just shows you, list out the equity market overall. You can see the S&P 500, which I mentioned previously, down for the year to date, down 8.1%, but the quarter to date up 7.5%. Your Russell Midcap, which is your mid-sized companies, up 9.1% for the quarter and down 17.3% for the last year. And then the Russell 2000, which are your smallest companies in the U.S., up 6.2% for the quarter, but down 20.44% for the year. Let's see here. Next page we have just looks at the international markets. We're really looking at the EFA index, which is the developed international for the quarter, down positive 17.3% for the quarter, but for the year to date down 14.5%. And then for the emerging markets, down 19.7% for the year to date, but positive 9.79% for the quarter. This page just gives us a look at the fixed income market overall. We really look at the Barclays aggregate to give us a good judgment of how the fixed income market overall has done. Positive for the quarter of 1.87%, but on the year to date down 13%. As I had mentioned previously, one of the worst markets that we've had on record for fixed income. When we look at the portfolio, this is for the 1949 pension plan. If you look on the top right-hand side, you can see the year-to-date summary, the beginning market value of $83,626,798. Net contributions are out, so we are sending money out on a monthly basis to cover the pensioner benefits of $5,191,859, and then an investment loss for the year of $13,545, giving you an ending market value of $64,889,609. If you look on the left-hand side of the bottom page, you can see that distribution of assets. We give you that by percentage and above it by dollar amount. You can see we had domestic equity exposure of right at 55.98%, international of 13.39%, giving us a total equity of 69.37%. Fixed income at 26.84%, and then 3.79% in cash at the end of the year. Any questions on that before I move on to the performance for each of the managers? Okay. This gives us a look at the performance. You can see your large cap value manager positive for the quarter of 11.44%, for the fiscal year down 12.85%. This actual manager did trail a little bit on the quarter and the fiscal year. At Atlanta, which is your large cap core manager, up 2.43%, but down 23% for the fiscal year. They trailed their benchmark as well. We have MDT, which is your all cap core manager, which was ahead of their benchmark over to both time frames, up 9.5% for the quarter, and the fiscal year down 14.28%. Your next two managers are international managers. We have 17.3% for the quarter for Lazard, right in line with their benchmark, and they were in line for the fiscal year as well, down 14.75%. Thornburg, that's your international, more growthy manager. They have a blend of value and growth. Up on the quarter, 16.8% ahead of their benchmark. But then they trailed a little bit on the fiscal year, down 19%. Fixed income manager next, right in line with their benchmark. For the quarter, up 1.63%, but for the fiscal, down 13.2%, which gives us a total return with the cash that we have kept on hand of 15.63% for the fiscal year. Slightly ahead of our stated policy index of 16.25. Next page just shows historical cash flow for the plan. You can see there on the cash flow that I mentioned earlier, out $5.1 million for last year. Any questions on the 49 plan before I move to the 45 plan? Okay. Well, let's go over positive first. Let's look at the January 31st update. This is on the 1949 plan so far for the first month of the year, positive 6.3%. And when I look at the managers overall, all the managers were in line or ahead of their benchmark for that time frame. So good performance so far for the year to date, just a little bit of a challenge for last year. $19.45 plan, same information, top right-hand side, beginning market value of $6,109,459, net distributions, contributions less distributions, and it was actually negative, so negative distributions out of $433,000, an investment loss for the year of $937,562, which brought us to an ending market value of $4,738,868. That brought us at the end of the year for total equity exposure of 49.6%. Fixed income of 46.57%, and cash of 3.79%. Managers, you'll see very similar performance. For the quarter to date, NFJ up 11.24, and for the fiscal year down 12.7. At Atlanta up 2.2 for the quarter and down 23.6 for the fiscal. MDT positive 9.5 for the quarter, but down 14.2 for the fiscal. We have your fixed income manager up 1.6 for the quarter and down 13.26 for the fiscal. That brings us a total net with cash for the quarter of positive 4.8%, and for the fiscal down 14.45%. This plan has a little bit higher degree of fixed income exposure, and so when we look at that, you'll see a little bit less performance on the downside. Buffeted them a little bit last year and has hampered their performance a little bit so far year to date. So positive for plan so far through January at 5.5%. Any questions on the 45 plan, 49 plan, or the market overall? Okay.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I would just like to receive this report as information. If there are no questions from my colleagues, motion to receive as information.
I have a motion. Is there a second? I have a motion and a second. I don't know if we need to vote, Madam Clerk. This is my first time conducting one of these meetings. Is there a vote required?
Yes, sir. It's same as the other committees
All right, you got it. All
and
right.
commission.
So I have a motion and a second. Voting.
Just raise your
Just raise your
hand.
hands. All right,
Yeah.
I forgot. Okay.
So it's unanimous.
It's unanimous.
It's just the members here.
All right, motion carries. Thank you so
Okay.
much, Madam, for being here. I appreciate everything you do for the city of Augusta.
Thank you very much.
All
And
right,
if you have
thank you.
any questions after the meeting, anything, my name, number, it was on the front of the presentation, so please don't hesitate to give me a call.
You got it. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank
appreciate
you.
it. Madam,
Second item is to receive as information the amount of the 5.0% for the COLA for the 1945 and 1945 pension plans according to the plan documents. Ms.
Right.
Mayor, Ms. Williams.
all right.
That's me.
I saw the name pop up. Ms.
Yes.
Williams,
Okay.
floor is yours.
So on March 1st of each year, the two plans that you just heard the investment results for the beneficiaries that are in those plans receive an annual cost of living increase. that increase is designed to mimic the CPI increase published by the Bureau of Labor and Statistics for the South region. That amount for December 22 was 7%. However, the plan documents limit the amount of COLA increase to a maximum of 5%. So as per the plan documents, each one of the beneficiaries will receive a cost of living increase of 5% on their March payment. And we'd just like to bring that information to the committee. There's no action needed.
All right, are there any questions? If not, we'd like to receive that as information
Without objection.
without objection.
And you have a handout.
Madam Clerk, is there anything else?
No, sir, that's it.
All right, seeing that there's no additional business, I consider this meeting closed. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for being here today. Madam Clerk, we're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. I apologize for our tardiness. We ready?
Yes, sir.
Let's go.
Okay. We call your attention to the invocation portion of our agenda, which will be delivered today by Pastor Sharon Cardwell, Bell Terrace Presbyterian Church, after which our Pledge of Allegiance, and we will ask Mr. Robert Osborne, will he please lead us into the pledge? No, not now.
Whoa, wait a minute. Prayer first, please. After the prayer. Reverend, please proceed. Thank you so much.
Mayor Johnson and the men and women who represent us so well, the Augusta Richmond County Commission, and to all who are gathered, let us go before the Lord together in prayer. Almighty and everlasting God, our Creator, we come before your presence this afternoon, O God, surrendering ourselves to your will. We pray for the municipality that is Augusta, Richmond County, Georgia. We pray, O God, for those who have been elected to lead us. We pray, Lord, that you would cover them in your grace and in your mercy, guide them with all wisdom, so that as they represent this great city, they will make wise decisions and godly decisions, that you may be glorified. And all of us who are gathered in this place will be able to recognize and to know that you are ever present, all wise, and all powerful. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, we pray. Amen. Amen. Amen.
And now join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pastor Cardwell. This is extremely a pleasure for me. Not only is Pastor Cardwell and I are childhood friends, and we're schoolmates, we're neighborhood friends, and we just grew up together. And it's a pleasure to have you here with us today, my love. By these presents be it known that Sharon Caldwell, pastor, Bell Terrace Presbyterian Church, is the chaplain of the day. May her spiritual guidance and civic leadership serve as an example for all citizens of Augusta. Given my hand this 21st day of February 2023, Garnett L. Johnson, Mayor.
Thank you, Pastor Caldwell, for being here today.
Thank you. And thank you, Robert, for being so energetic as always, for leading us in our pledge. It's good to see you.
Madam Clerk, let's continue.
Yes, sir. Call your attention to the recognition portion of our agenda. We would like to offer our congratulations to Commissioner Francine Scott. Would you please stand? Ms. Denise Winfrey, who's president of the NACO, National Association of County Officials. She says again, congratulations on your nomination to the Justice and Public Safety Steering Committee. This promises to be an exciting year, and I look forward to working with you to further the goals of our nation's counties. Congratulations again, Commissioner Scott, on your appointment. Next, item B is congratulations to our January 2023 Years of Service recipients. Ms. Anita Rookett, our HR Director.
Good afternoon, Mayor Johnson, Commissioners, Interim Administrator, and citizens of Augusta. Today, it is our esteemed pleasure to recognize our January Years of Service recipients. For the month of January 2023, we had 31 employees celebrating 5 to 50 years of service with the City of Augusta. This afternoon, we'd like to recognize our 25 to 50 years of service recipients. For the month of January, the total years of service and institutional knowledge being celebrated is 425 years. When I call your name, please come forward. Mr. John Roche, Marshal's Office, 25 years. Thomas Weathers, Sheriff's Office, 25 years. Moses Chatham, Sheriff's Office, 25 years. He is not here today. Vincent Washington, Sheriff's Office, 30 years. Congratulations again to all our years of service recipients. Thank you.
Call your attention to the delegation portion of our agenda. Ms. Shalonda Morris regarding Diamond Lake Scoring Tower, stormwater drainage issues.
Welcome, Ms. Morris. For the record, if you would state your name and address.
Shalonda Morris, 2913 Cary Court, Augusta, Georgia.
Thank you.
099.
Thank you, Ms. Morris. Before I give you 5 minutes, I just have a few comments to make regarding this matter, okay? During some previous commission meetings, there were some discussions surrounding Diamond Lakes, the scoring tower repairs, and it was made clear that issues surrounding the drainage of those towers were a result of the contractor. During those discussions, not only was Universal Plumbing name brought to mention, but so was CMI LLC, and we want to make known that the issues that are surrounding the drainage issues was no result of your companies. So concerning the towers, good faith efforts were made, and additional work is required, and we realize that it's going to take some time and some effort from this commission to fix that. But on behalf of the mayor, thank you for the work that Universal Plumbing continues and to do throughout this community. We will continue to have a relationship with you, and we just want to let you know that, okay? And with that being said, Ms. Morris, you have 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to be able to clarify any questions there were about the role that we had in the repairs and the existing repairs, or the continuing repairs that need to happen. Happy to do that in public or offline, but we appreciate you clarifying that that we did complete the work that we were hired to do, and that the work that needs to be done now is unrelated to the work that we were hired to do. But we also value our relationship with you guys and hope to continue working with you for many more years to come.
Thank you so much, Ms. Morris. Administrator Dowse.
Mayor Johnson, thank you for that comment, and Ms. Morris as well. We appreciate Universal Plumbing's continued support for the City of Augusta. I would like the media as well as the commission and Augusta's residents to know that the documentation has since been received by Universal Plumbing, so there is no outstanding issues of concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Administrator. The chair recognizes the commissioner from the 10th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As far as Ms. Morris, I wanted her to see if she would actually bring us up to speed, the reason why she was hired for, her company was hired, what they have done, and what preventive measure can we, at the time, do, and was it done, number one. Because ever since her company has left, we actually used numerous other companies, and I believe they were in the path of where it went wrong.
Right. So we were originally hired to install floor drain sinks, which were designed to capture storm water. So that's the rainwater on the roof and then take it out to the existing storm drain system. That is what we were hired to do, and that's the work that we completed. We did discover that there were other issues, which we brought, to people's attention, but the work that we were hired to do is not related to what needs to be done now.
Can you expand on them other issues so we can be enlightened?
Where it seemed like there was some confusion around whether it was stormwater versus sanitary sewer. So the restrooms are able to be used. What we did is unrelated to the restrooms, the sanitary sewer, that type of drain water at all. We were there to assist in the flooring. So there was a flooring issue, and so we were hired to install those floor sinks so that the new floor could be put on there, and that was it.
And you worked hand in hand with other contractors as well?
We worked with a contractor, yes. When you say worked hand in hand with a contractor, can you just clarify?
If you are in the plumbing business, you had to use a tile person or concrete to remove the concrete demolition person.
Right. So we weren't over that project. There was a contractor, and we were just brought in to do the floor sinks so that the person who was over that flooring project could complete the flooring. That was it. So did you want to come and clarify? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Jones, for being here. For the record, please state your name and address, please.
My name is Larry Jones. My home address is 119 Reed Creek Road.
Thank you, sir.
So I think where the confusion came in is that initially, when I initially looked at the flooring, which is like an observation deck, there was ceramic tile on the flooring that had obviously been worn and just kind of in shatters. And we were hired to put in these floor sinks so that the floor could be epoxied. These floor sinks, I think it's like 21 on each tower, I believe it was. The contractor came in and put in new floors, new epoxy floors to those floor sinks. Subsequent to that, we got a call about maybe 3 months later and said that water was still coming out of the restrooms. We went out and checked our floor sinks to see if they were sealed around the sides, and they were sealed. We went ahead and put some sealing around them anyway, just to kind of make sure that it was okay. Subsequent to that, maybe 2-3 months, I don't know how long it was, we got another call, said water's coming out. So we're scratching our heads, what's going on? Because we didn't do anything to the piping itself that was inside of the walls, inside of the building itself. We went out and we got some blueprints, and we started looking at the blueprints. So certainly, if these drains are backing up, there has to be something else going on. So when we found the blueprints, like I say, we looked at it and we discovered that the piping was non-accessible. So what we did, we went out with the jackhammer, went into the closet, or I'm sorry, the Empire's changing room. We jackhammered through a concrete block wall went into a confined space and found a piece of pipe that was coming down from the drain, from the storm drain system. We got some sawzalls and we cut a section of the pipe out. And so I'm thinking to myself, guys, why is it taking so long to cut through this pipe? It's PVC pipe, so it's hard. And when we got the section of PVC pipe out, and I took pictures of it, I even have a piece of that pipe at my office. I sent a piece of that pipe, or gave a piece of that pipe to the deputy director at that time because it was almost closed up with a very hard substance. When we put the floor sinks in, we taped them up to make sure nothing would go into the floor sinks, because I know sometimes people use their residual to pour into drains.
That's correct.
We turned it in to the deputy director. I kept a piece of it. Our findings was, when that building was built, because it's concrete around this building, there was some residual base, which was mud that they use, they call it mud, to put the ceramic tile down. So rather than, it's what we concluded, rather than take the excess in 5-gallon buckets, because if you pour it over the side of the observation tower, you're going to hit on concrete. It's going to be so obvious. So rather than find a place to discard it, there's a floor sink right in front of you. It was poured down the floor sink. Before it got to the exterior of the building, that it gotten hard and calcified. And so when rainwater comes in so fast and so much that it started backing up out of the drains. And so when I talked to the deputy director, he said, well, you know, 2 jobs that I was tasked to do when I took this job. He said, one was to make sure that Caramay's facility had adequate fire protection pressure, and the other one was to find out why these drains are backing up at Diamond Lakes. And so what our conclusion was, as this was something that happened during the original construction of that building. And that's where we were with it. We knew nothing about the drains when we had a contract, nothing else. Had I been tasked or asked to even give a bid on replacing those drains or repairing them, realistically, I probably would have walked away, because they're in confined spaces. I mean, you got to tear this building apart to get to all of those roof drains.
Mr. Jones, what year was that, and who'd you send the email to with this issue?
Well, I gave the pipe itself to Mr. Wembley, Lonnie Wembley. That was 2019.
2019. Okay.
And it might have been 2020. I'm not sure. We have document. Was it 2000? Was it 19? Yeah, 19. It was 19?
And Mr. Jones, I appreciate that information, and hopefully I have nothing to add to that. It's a shame.
Yes.
That we spending all this money knowing what the issue was on the front side. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chair recognizes the Commissioner from the 8th, Commissioner Garrett.
Actually, I had a question for Mr. Jones, if he's got a second.
Mr. Jones? One additional question.
Hey, sir. One question.
Yes, sir.
I know when Commissioner Mason and I were out on site, we were told that there was some camera work done on those drains.
Yes, sir.
Was that something that you were part of, or was that after you?
We did some camera work as well.
Okay.
I think it's like 15 photos, maybe, of live shots and some still shots as well.
Okay.
And the other side of that is because there, and this is only like a certain portion of that building, and I think that one portion of the building where some drains are there, fine, but I think that whoever did it, and I have no idea, that's this portion of the building that they were working on. And I did hear this from the deputy director. He said he had asked his workers to try to clear those drains. He said the equipment would not get through those drains. There's no sewer equipment or drain equipment. And not only that, but you can only go so far with the cameras itself.
Oh, wow. Okay. Thanks, sir. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Chair recognizes the Commissioner from the 5th, Commissioner Williams.
Yes, sir. Mr. Johnson, please. But you said you were there to put in some drains from the top.
Yes, sir. They're not drains. They aren't drains themselves. They're called floor sinks. They're like little, maybe 12 by 12 boxes that collects debris. Out of that, the bottom of it is square. The bottom of it is shaped like a pipe, and so you connect the bottom of it to the existing piping, and that was the extent of the length of our work. We had to jackhammer the old ones out, put the new ones in, connect them right at the bottom.
But the real problem, you said you didn't even make a bid on it, or?
We had no idea that the piping was compromised.
Okay. So your opinion in going forward, looking through the cameras and what have you, needs a total tear out and needs to be redone and so forth, and you think that this was something that was done when the building was built?
I think it was. And there's another side of that. The calcification of these drain lines, and there are several of them in this building, in both buildings, are in the ceilings and in the walls. Where we accessed the pipe was at the flooring in the Empire's closet. And as we cut a section out, we also cut a section out at the flooring, and you could also see it going down to the flooring. So whatever is under the slab, however far it goes, it's not confined, I don't believe, to just the walls and the ceilings.
I got you. All right. Well, thank you. Mr. Mayor, it is my opinion that there were some people who were in charge in 2019, going all the way up to administration, the commission, people who should have made decisions way back then to correct the problem should have took initiative to correct the problem. So I don't know who was the administrator then. I don't know who all was a part of the commission at that point in time. But I think all of us need to take some responsibility for that. It is our responsibility to get the job done, to move forward, to find a problem-solving solution, and I think we have that, and move forward. Diamond Lakes is too important an entity in the community for us to let it to be like it is. My understanding is that this problem started 4, 5, 6 years ago, maybe further back than that. And that was prior to my coming to the commission, and it still exists. And this is my 4th year, I believe, on the commission. So we just need to put together the monies and the solution, somebody who can go in there and get this thing done for us and move forward. I don't think we need to blame anybody in particular at this point in time. I think we need to move forward with solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Jones, again, thank you for being here, sir. Madam Clerk?
Yes. Our consent agenda consists of items 1 through 35, items 1 through 35. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, are you wanting us to pull that item so that we can read into the record the motion for number 3? Okay, Ms. Dowse also wanted to address that with the funding source. Okay. So we'll pull item number 3. Consent agenda, items 1 through 35.
Are there any additions or deletions? I have one addendum.
Can we request item 38 be added to the consent agenda?
That's what I was gonna do.
38 added.
Mayor Johnson, since we're
Yes.
reading the funding recommendations into record, is that necessary for number 10 concerning Augusta tomorrow as well?
What do you mean, to put the funding source on the record?
Yes.
Yes. we're
Okay,
gonna do
thank
that.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Administrator. All right, seeing the queue, we're going to start with Commissioner from the 10th, Commissioner Guilfoyle.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull just a couple questions on agenda item number 5 and agenda item number 14. Thank you.
Number 14. Okay.
All right. It's 5 and 14, Commissioner from the 5th.
Yes, sir. May we add to the consent agenda 38?
Oh,
You already did?
That's already at it.
37? Are we good with that? Okay. And I'm not sure about 36.
Probably.
Better leave that one on. I have questions for 36.
Yeah, and it says District 5, but I think it's your district, is it not, sir?
It is.
So somebody was wrong.
Somebody. But
So-
it'll be okay.
Yeah, all
All
right.
right.
So I'm good.
You good? All right, Commissioner from the 8th. Commissioner Garrett.
Motion to approve is stated.
Second.
All right, Madam Clerk, we have a motion and a second. Voting. Bruce?
No, we're pulling it so that you can identify the funding source for it. Yeah.
I thought I heard Commissioner Bobby Williams add 37 to the consent as well.
I did.
That's the bylaws of the Planning Commission, so we need that.
Yes, Commissioner Bobby
Yeah,
Williams
right.
requested it to be
Yeah.
added. It's not on your listing on the screen. Or number 10.
What, for items pulled? Yeah, I've got them.
All right. You wanna,
Well, we're having difficulty with the new software, so we're getting there.
all right, so for clarity, are we gonna put them on the screen, or are we gonna?
Okay, our consent agenda consists of items 1 through 38. We're adding 1 through 35. 38 is being added to the consent agenda, along with 37. And we're pulling items number 3, number 5, number 10, number 14 for additional questions.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Are we voting?
Mr. Garrett and Mr. Franham. The addendum item, they haven't accepted it to the agenda yet.
It's accepted without objection.
Yeah, we're gonna do it without objection.
Any objections? All right, I don't see any objections, Madam Clerk.
Okay, are we voting on the consent agenda now, sir?
Yes, ma'am, we are.
Okay.
All right, voting.
Mr. Mason is absent.
Bless
Ms.
you.
Johnson? Thank you. It's unanimous.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. Attorney Brown, to understand there's a need for us to,
You all want to clean this up? Wait a minute.
all right, Madam Clerk, let's
Okay.
proceed, please. Thank you.
Item number 3, Commissioner Garrett would like to offer the following motion to approve $850,000 for repairs to the drain pipes and bathrooms at the Diamond Lake Scoring Tower, with $788,359.58 going to change order number 1 from Horizon Construction to complete repairs, and $86,055.94 going to ACC Restoration for the remediation prior to repairs.
Motion approved.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Are there any further discussions before we vote?
I think the
Madam
Madam
Administrator.
Administrator, you want me to read yours?
Please.
Okay. The administrator is recommending the Diamond Lake Scoring Tower, $850,000, $350 from SPLOST 7, which will cover Diamond Lake Scoring Towers interest revenue, $500,000 from SPLOST 8 Diamond Lakes. Okay, that was Mr. Franham and Ms. McKnight.
All right?
Okay. Are we voting,
Yeah,
sir?
No, 1 second.
Oh.
Chair recognizes the commissioner from the 7th.
Oh.
You just voted? You just voted? Chair recognizes the commissioner from the 1st.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question, are these funds being taken from another line item? Or are these just funds in spot 7 that are not being used at the moment?
One line item is interest revenue, so no, funds are not being taken from another line item. The other is funding that was already allocated to Diamond Lakes.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Madam Clerk, we have a motion and we have a second. We're ready to vote. Voting.
It's unanimous.
Thank you. Let's proceed.
Item number 5, Commissioner Guilfoyle, you.
Madam Clerk, if the mayor would not mind, can we go ahead and jump to item number 10 and then jump back at it to item number 5? That way we could get Augusta tomorrow. I know they're busy
You got it,
individuals.
right. Let's move forward. Yes, sir. Madam Clerk, let's move forward to item number 10.
Item 10 is to approve presentation by Augusta tomorrow to include a request in the amount of $150,000 for the upcoming urban area master plan. And Mr. Guilfoyle, the administrator, is recommending that the $150,000 be allocated from the fiscal year 23 capital allocation.
Motion to approve.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Are there any discussions needed? If not, we're voting.
It's unanimous.
Thank you, Madam.
You
Let's-
going back to 5 now, sir?
Yes, ma'am, please, thanks.
Okay. Item 5 is to approve an update to the Augusta, Georgia DBE program for federal assisted contracts in order to comply with the Department of Transportation program and update DBE Rule 49.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Hey, Madam, welcome.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Mr. Mayor, I
All
got
right.
the floor.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Johnson, thank you for coming before us. I just had a couple questions on this. I was looking at the attached documents in here, and it's showing that one of our former directors over the DBE from 2013, 2015 era, that I just wanted to make sure, number one, that these ain't the same documents that got us sued by Thompson Reckon that's attached. Had we had the attorney or the administrator look at the attached documents? Were you showing that as far as the Augusta, Georgia has been designated the following individual of our DBA liaison, Miss Gentry?
That's,
Has anybody looked at this as far as our attorneys?
what page are you looking at?
I'm looking at pages 7 of 43. It was an attachment of last week's
I may need to,
section 26.25 DBE liaison officer.
hold on. Because I don't see what he's talking about. I think you're referring to the old plan because what,
This old-
what should have been attached was the new plan that replaced her. She should not be listed in there.
Ms. Johnson, I didn't put the book together. All I'm doing is seeing what was attached, and I just wanted to make sure whatever we put out to the public, just make sure, attorney should have looked at this, administrator should have made sure that we're not being put in harm's way.
That's what I'm saying.
Let me answer, please.
Hold on.
Would you like to see the doc?
Yes, sir. Page 7.
There's a couple other questions I'm going to have to ask.
It's on the tab number 5.
Ms. Bonner. This was on the front side. This was on the rear side of the attachment.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Clerk.
Can we recess this item for a moment so that Ms. Johnson can get with her staff member?
Or-
And then maybe we can reschedule this when we come back out of
I think
legal
it'd be appropriate. Yes, thank you so much.
Is it a time
to reconcile it.
Is this time sensitive to where it could go back to committee to be?
Yes, this is time sensitive.
Okay.
So we will pause this till after the legal
Okay.
session to give you an opportunity, Ms. Johnson and staff,
Okay.
to reconcile the discrepancy.
Okay.
Ms. Johnson, I appreciate you coming forward with the grant, but I just wanted to make sure that we are not going to be put in harm's way in the future. It was probably a misunderstanding by somebody putting it in the docs, but
Okay.
it'll put us in harm's way as a body.
All right,
Okay,
Madam
do
Clerk.
Are we going
You're
into
gonna-
legal now?
You going to pause this item
Yes, sir.
until
we're
after
gonna-
legal?
yeah.
All right? Next time, let's move on. That's number. Does that put us at number 14?
Okay, are we going to legal or are we going to
Is-
finish up?
Is that all the consent items?
No, we
Okay.
have one. Mr. Guilfoyle asked that item
The
14
14.
be pulled for
Okay.
question.
All right.
I didn't know if that could wait till we come out.
You can?
Okay.
All right.
All right.
That can wait. All right. Attorney Brown?
Thank you, Mayor Johnson, Commission. We'll request to go into executive session for the discussion of pending or potential litigation.
Second.
Motion and a second. Voting. And Madam Clerk, while we're voting, do you know which room we're going to?
291.
291.
That motion carries 8-1. Is Mr. Guilfoyle abstaining?
You may have hit the wrong button. He ran out. Okay. All right. We're going to legal. Should not be very long. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
we'll request a motion to execute the closed meeting affidavit.
All right.
So moved.
We'll have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, for voting. No votes. Closing. Yep. Motion to close.
Ms. Pulliam? It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, that takes us back to item number 5.
Yeah, before we get there, Madam Clerk, someone asked me to address the addendum item. Can we go there first?
Sure.
I understand. All right,
Okay.
thank you.
The addendum item is to discuss the sequential intercept mapping report.
All right. Chair recognizes the commissioner from the first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I brought this back before my colleagues today because about a year or so ago, the commission voted to on a resolution to make Augusta a stepping up city, which basically says that we will commit ourselves to lowering the amount of individuals that we incarcerate with mental health concerns and instead divert them into programs to get them the help that they need. This was a very big lift for where mental health is concerned within our county, and we reached out to the University of Georgia to lead us in that conversation. They were able to get us to a pretty good point through a sequential intercept mapping model. We have a fantastic leader in our community through that Public Defender's Office, Elizabeth Barnes here, Mr. Mayor, who's going to kind of give us a quick overview of where we are, how we got here, and what are some next steps. And I'd also like for our administrator to chime in briefly after Ms. Barnes, as this is something that we have not sat on for the last year or so. We've just wanted to make sure that before we came before this body that all of our ducks are in a row, so to speak. And so the report, I believe, has been copied, and I think you all have copies of that SIM report. And at a later date, we plan to come back before the commission with some type of workshop. I know we hate hearing that, but there are some things that needs to be done in this plan to just make sure that all parties are on the same page again. But for today's purposes, we just want to hear a quick report and get a little feedback so that we can move on with the plan. But this is something that the commission unanimously voted on back in 21, and I'm still grateful for your support on that to the commission.
Thank you. Ms. Barnes?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Thank you for inviting me to present a little more about the Stepping Up Initiative and the Sequential Intercept Mapping Project. So just to give a bit of context, I helped organize the Sequential Intercept Mapping Workshop when I was an AmeriCorps Vista service member. Stands for Volunteer in Service to America. And after the commission passed the Stepping Up Initiative, usually what we've seen in other counties happen is they need to assess the scope of the problem. So other counties in Georgia, such as DeKalb, Chatham, Fulton, Forsyth, Rockdale, have pursued a comprehensive local mapping workshop to identify how people with mental illness flow through the criminal justice system, and that's been very needed. One of the agencies that helps with this in Georgia specifically is UGA's Carl Vinson Institute of Government, and they have 3 facilitators who trained with the Policy Research Associates in 2019 to learn how to run these Georgia-specific SIM workshops. So I just want to explain a little bit about what sequential and intercept means. The intercepts that are assessed by bringing people from these agencies into a conversation go from 0 to 5, so sequential 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 0, as you'll see in the report, is community services. 1 is law enforcement. 2 is initial detention, initial court hearings. 3 is jails and courts. 4 is reentry. and 5 is community corrections. So it looks like a sequence of these intercepts, sort of these connecting points. And through this workshop, Augusta was able to look at the gaps and the resources that we do have and the opportunities for growth across each of those intercepts. So on October 12th of 2021, from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., there were participating stakeholders, and I'll just list them all right here so you know the sense of who all was involved. The Sheriff's Office, including Charles B. Webster Detention Center, representatives from Augusta University Medical, Serenity Behavioral Health, American Work, 911 Dispatch, Behavioral Health Link. They are the operators of GCAL, the Georgia Crisis and Access Line, NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, the District Attorney's Office, the Solicitor General, Public Defender's Office, court professionals from state, superior, accountability, juvenile, civil, and magistrate court, and court administration. So as you can see, it spans a lot of different agencies. So it was a very collaborative process. So that all occurred throughout the day of October 12th. And then December 2021, the final report was finalized, which is what you have in front of you today. So participants from that workshop were able to vote, select priorities, and finalize recommendations at the end. So if you turn to, I think, page 20, you can see the priorities that were voted on. So I'll just go through a couple of the recommendations. So page 21 starts one of the recommendations from the report. And bear in mind, this is collaborative. This is not coming from any one source. This was voted on by all the participants. One was to reestablish the Richmond County Sheriff's Office co-responder model. 2 was to implement a validated mental health screen in the Richmond County Jail. One of those is the correctional mental health screen for men and women. Number 3 was to improve reentry planning. And then number 4 was to create a task force. So I was very honored to be able to help participate and organize this in workshop. But from here on out, strategic planning is definitely necessary. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you, ma'am, for being here. Commissioner from the first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I want to, again, thank everyone who came to the table. As you see, it was a collaborative effort between many agencies. And we've heard on the news, even most recently, where folks have been incarcerated in and out of jail, some even in our homeless community. And we believe simply that if we handle this from a more intentional perspective, right? You have the necessary people on the ground to respond to calls. You have resources in place through Serenity and through other places. Augusta University is at the table. I think that we can actually save ourselves money in the long run when it comes down to, in connection, I guess I can say, with incarceration, how much money we're spending per inmate. We can save ourselves money along the line with wear and tear of our facilities. Our sheriff's office has been engaged. I just think that this has been a very progressive lift. So I do want to thank you, Elizabeth. I know you've gotten recruited to another city, so we hate to see you leave. But thank you for your work. And I also see my colleague from the 8th and the Q. He's been very helpful in this process as well. But before Commissioner Garrett, Mr. Mayor, is it okay if we hear from our administrator?
Yes, Madam Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson and Commissioner Johnson. As stated, mental health is a problem that continues to plague not only the United States and possibly even worldwide, but definitely Augusta, Richmond County. I had a brief conversation with Sheriff Roundtree concerning this matter, and earlier in 2020, the state funded clinicians for this program. That is no longer the case, and this body would have to decide if this is a program that you would want to fund sometimes in the near future. In addition to that, both the Sheriff's Office as well as the Marshal's Office has crisis intervention trained personnel to assist with those calls as far as de-escalation of mental health issues. So I just wanted to make sure that this body was aware of what past efforts have been done. This document outlines some gaps in service on page 9, as well as some additional reference issues that I would want to make sure you are aware of.
Thank you, Madam Administrator. Chair recognizes the Commissioner from the 8th.
you have any other questions?
No. I mean, I think again where we are is we're at a really good place. The commission would just have to make sure that we want to take on this item because I do believe that it can help our community. We saw about a couple years ago where a young man was involved with some law officers and he thought he was on the run. He thought that the CIA was trying to kill him. And officers came to his home and made the situation much worse. It's not an indictment on the officers. They just didn't have the training necessary to handle the situation appropriately. And this young man lost everything. He lost his job, he lost his home, and I believe he was staying with his mom. And so like a lot of these situations you're hearing every day, you get these types of records, so that makes housing more virtually impossible to get when you get felonies on your records for things like this. And so again, I just think that this is something that the city should definitely take a closer look at. And I know in the recommendations it says that we should have a task force. I know we don't like those. There's already an existing homeless task force with the mental health work group. I just suggest that we allow that task force to take this on as a task through that work group. But again, thank you so much for this effort, and I hope that our city will make this a priority to address the mental health needs of those in our community, because certainly mental health awareness is something that we should be serious about in our county. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner from the 1st. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 8th, Commissioner Garrett.
Thank you, Mayor. Elizabeth, thank you so much for coming today and filling us in and, showing all the work that you've put into this, and we do appreciate your work. And I think I'm going to tag on where Commissioner Johnson said, we're sad to see you go, but good luck where you end. And I know that you've got a new niece or nephew that you're looking forward to seeing, so that is good. In your presentation, you talked about the final recommendation was to create a task force or other planning body. I think Commissioner Johnson was talking about maybe piggybacking on the homeless task force, or maybe even a subset of that. That may be a way that we can do. But it seems that also, we've talked about, we heard from the administrator where sheriff and the marshal have people on staff that could help there. But I think the bigger part of this is within the court system, and so I think that we need to really make sure that we have judges and the sheriff's office really need to be very involved, given the nature of the priorities that you identified in your report. So if we were to implement this task force or even to add it to the homeless task force, what would that look like? What are those next steps?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure exactly what the city wants to do regarding creating a body to move this forward. However, we have been having some conversations with the University of Georgia, and they are willing to do a strategic planning meeting before the commission to really outline exactly what that would need to look like, what it looks like in other counties that have been successful with some of these recommendations. So I would definitely bring it back to some examples that we can see elsewhere in Georgia for sure.
Do we have contacts for who you've been speaking to there?
At the University of Georgia, yes, and we can make sure that those are shared.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
Elizabeth, thank you for being here. My question is for Commissioner from the 1st and the 8th. With Elizabeth leaving, do we have a chain of custody or some sort of process to bring this forward as?
Yes, sir. So again, like I said, a lot of this kind of sprung out of the efforts of the task force after Ms. Barnes was I guess I'll say thrown in the middle of it, for lack of a better phrase. Ashley is here in the audience. Ashley has also been a great arm to this conversation as well. Dr. Donna Moraine. Donna has been down here a number of times. And so we have contact there, and especially through all the great work that's happened in the Public Defender's Office. That's really where you're going to find a lot of resource on this. And again, your homeless task force is a good first stop. And then we do, like Elizabeth was saying, we have contact with the Carl Vinson Institute of Government with Dr. Johnson and Holly Lind. Those great folks, they've been working with us on this as well. And so if this is something that the commission would like to pursue, the University of Georgia has offered to come down and do a strategic planning session that does come with a price tag of $2,000. And they can help us get this thing rolling, get the task force rolling if we choose not to make it a subset of the homeless task force. Whatever we do, this body will just have to make that decision. I'm not sure we're in the position now to make a motion to do any of that. But I would suggest that we take a look at the plan and make sure that this is what we would like to do before calling Carl Vinson, the Institute, back down to do some work with us.
Thank you, Commissioner from the 1st. Ms. Barnes, thank you for being here. Thank you so much.
Make a motion to receive his information, Mr. Mayor.
All right. I have a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, are there any discussions before we vote? If not, voting. All right. Let's see. There's still 2 items. I don't see Ms. Johnson here for item.
She's here.
She's back? Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. I can't see her behind the.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Before Ms. Johnson comes up, the administrator clarified that the old DBE was there's an old one and the new red line version, but I didn't, like she missed, intern administrator said we should have redlined it, or, you know, it was my misunderstanding. So, Ms. Johnson, I apologize if I caused you any convenience. I was just making sure that we've been before courts using that old information, and I was just trying to make sure we were doing our business right. Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chair recognizes the administrator.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. I wanted to clarify my statement to Commissioner Guilfoyle. I wanted to make certain that he recognized that the new document as well as the old document was included, and while the document was not redlined, that Director Johnson can speak to any changes if that was relating to his question. So not that the document should have been redlined.
Okay. Chair recognizes the Commissioner from the 7th.
Motion to approve.
So there's a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, let's vote.
It's unanimous.
Okay.
That takes us to item 14, is to approve and authorize the reallocation of the right-of-way maintenance quick strike 1 million AARP funds allocation as follows. 1, $550,000 to Windsor Spring Road Landscape Segment Irrigation System installation. 2, $265,000 to RCCI for Augusta Engineering Roadway Drainage Vegetation Maintenance Fiscal Year 23 services. Change as services provided. 3, $185,000 to the vacant lot cleanup program. Also approved directing Augusta Finance Department issuing job ledgers accordingly.
All right.
Mr. Guilfoyle asked that this be pulled.
Commissioner from the 10th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This question, I guess, for the administrator or the finance. Everything here reflects to a stormwater issue. There's not funding from the stormwater, and we got to use the ARPA money from sprinkler systems to drainage to vegetation maintenance. Could we not use stormwater money for this?
So this particular allocation, Commissioner Guilfoyle, was a previous decision in which ARP dollars were a part of a quick strike program. And yes, it could have been funded via another source, but at the time, this was the recommendation and what was approved by the body to utilize ARP funding.
I'm sorry I wasn't here prior to the January. Can some of my colleagues chime in and kind of enlighten me why we went this way?
Yeah, my concern is, those dollars were allocated for cleaning the community, for quick strike, for cutting grass and things of that nature. And just removing those dollars away from probably more maintenance-related issues, in my opinion, creates a concern for me in that, right now, as you drive around our city, and I've said this repeatedly, we have areas that need to be addressed. I just went to North Augusta for lunch. And you're driving across the Gordon Highway Bridge, there's trash, there's debris everywhere. It would be my opinion to try to keep those dollars there to address those needs. Unless, Madam Administrator, you can tell me that there's money in the budget to tackle and to address that. As we near one of the biggest, I consider it now 2 weeks in our city, we got to put forth an effort to get the city prepared and ready, and having access to dollars to get that done certainly gives us what I consider a competitive edge instead of removing them. So, I would be comfortable with if you telling me that, there's dollars, there's resources for cleaning up, especially as we receive complaints from not only citizens but constituents, without having to find a funding source. That'd be well.
Mr. Mayor Johnson, that is exactly the case. Yes, there is dollars for vacant lot cleanup as well as debris cleanup throughout our city. I want to also bring note that this is only a $50,000 reallocation. $1 million was the total. $500,000 originally went to the irrigation plan. However, since that project was not done in 2022, it's now an additional $50,000. So we're moving $50,000 from the right-of-way mowing to make that $450 and increasing the $500,000 original allocation to $550,000. So we're moving $50,000 from one line item to another.
And then the other 500,000 comes from the ARP funding, is that?
No, sir, it's $1 million. And so the original allocation was $500,000 for irrigation and $500,000 for right-of-way mowing. The request today is $450,000 for right-of-way mowing and $550,000 for irrigation. So it's a $50,000 transfer from one line item to the other. Still $1 million. And yes, there is funds for litter control.
I got you. I want to recognize the commissioner from the 8th, Commissioner Garrett.
Thank you. For those of us that were here, this was actually kind of a program that started under, or actually a recommendation from previous administrator, and so because it's been a couple years, I guess, since we really had this discussion, and we all know costs have gone up, so I make a motion to approve this, especially with Administrator Dowse's explanation that is a $50,000 transfer from one fund to the other.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. See Commissioner Williams in the queue. You still?
Yeah, I still want to talk.
All right. Come on with it, sir.
No, I was about to say that, you were talking about cleaning up the city. This is just another way of cleaning up the city. I see $265,000 for RCCI, and a lot of people don't understand that many times when we get in a situation, we call the ward down there RCCI, so that's really good. We probably don't give them enough money. I see $185,000 for vacant lot cleanup, and that's a big part of what needs to be done. Vacant lots are just lots, period. So this is another way of cleaning up Augusta, just reallocated a different way. So I support this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, we have a motion and a second. Without further discussions, let's vote. Voting.
It's unanimous.
All right. Is that it?
That's it.
That concludes our business. Thank you guys for being here today. 36. I'm sorry. 36.
Oh, the zoning matter. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Good catch. Good catch.
We should have got her.
Good catch. Welcome, Ms. Delaney. Good day. How are you?
Good afternoon. So today we have before you application Z-23-04 is an application by Bobby Bagwell in regards to 11 parcels in District 8 and Super District 10. The applicant is requesting to rezone from R1 to R3B in order to establish a townhome community. The applicant is seeking to put 30 dwelling units that are 2 bedrooms and 2.5 baths with a residential density of 3.9 dwelling units per acre. The Planning Commission has heard the application, has recommended approval, and the applicant has a concern with regards to one of the conditions. Out of the 8 conditions put forth, there is condition number 4. That's on page 721 of your packet. And they had some concerns in regards to the width that we are requesting for each lot. One of the challenges that we faced as a department, along with engineering and utilities, is making sure that what's installed on the ground is consistent with what is proposed. We've noticed a trend developing wherein they are not placing things where they should be. So your water lines, some of your sewer lines, and all that stuff, they're paving over it. That we're having challenges with location of meters and things of that nature. Part of the reason for that is they're not giving themselves enough room, a margin of error in case you overshoot. There's no 3 feet, 2 feet, anything excess for you to recoup that space once you install it incorrectly. So one of the things that we were asked by utilities is, as we review plans, to recommend a 25-foot wide lot. That way, there's a little bit of room for error. And so we're not coming back having them pull everything out, and then you all get called because they don't want to pull everything out. So the applicant, for the most part, is in agreement with the recommendations. That was their only concern, hence the reason it's not on the consent agenda. And I can field any questions from there.
Thank you. Commissioner from the 8th.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for our planning director.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you for bringing this up, and I'm in full support of this. And I actually had a conversation with the developer, and he stated that if he went to the 25-foot lots, then will lose units, and so that kind of makes this project a little on the verge of being undoable. So I know that the plumbing part and all that's been an issue in the past, but a lot of that I think is probably because we didn't really have a plan in place for where those the water and sewer would actually go, correct?
No, that is part of the civil submission. Okay. That is part of the plan. They are not installing it. The developer versus the builder are different. So you'll have a person develop the land. They're not necessarily the one that comes back and builds. So those things are not lining up. But it is part of the civil plan review.
Is there a way to make sure that does happen during the construction?
It's usually caught in the field. So when they go out to do the construction, meaning utilities, engineering, whatever entity is going, they're noticing that they're not installing it consistent with the plan. So then there's we're going to ask for forgiveness instead of permission.
Mayor, I'd like to talk to the developer if possible.
Certainly, it's the developer.
And I did consult with the director of utilities, Mr. Westbine. He said he'd be willing to speak on it too.
Good day, sir. If you will, for the record, please state your name and address.
I'm Bobby Bagwell. I live at 6566 Reservoir Road, Appling, Georgia.
You've heard the recommendation from the director. So I'm not sure who will be doing the project or how that all works, but is there a way that we can put it on paper and put it on the same thing that's on paper on the ground?
Yes, I understand the concern from the utility department, and this is a problem when you get into tight, confined areas. And the missing piece of information that I've found is primarily with the driveway location as to where the water and sewer taps are located on these lots. So what we plan to do was take and add a utility detail to our civil plans that identifies where the driveways will be located to avoid the conflicts that the utility department's encountered in the past. So I know oftentimes the biggest issue is they end up in the driveway. So you end up with either their sewer cap or water meter that doesn't align with the driveway, and those are problematic. I understand that, but I think with some additional planning by the engineer, we can overcome that and maintain the 22-foot width.
All right, thanks, sir. I'd like to make a motion that we approve this with the 22-foot lots with the additional planning piece as he suggested.
Second. All right, I have a motion and a second. There's a couple people in the queue. Commissioner from the 3rd, Commissioner McKnight. Commissioner.
I just seconded.
Okay. Commissioner from the 5th.
Yes. Is 22 feet good with you guys?
We would prefer that it be 25 feet.
What's going to be the difference? 22, 25?
Well, I mean, everyone says condition is going to kill the project, so we have to take that, but
that's your recommendation, 25?
Yes, our recommendation is still 25 feet.
I make a substitute motion that we do it with 25 feet.
Second.
All right, I have a substitute motion and a second.
Mr. Mayor, before we vote.
Yes, sir. I see you in the queue.
Can we hear from Wes Bine, Director Bine?
Mr. Bynes, please approach, sir.
How are y'all this afternoon?
Good, sir. How are you?
Very good. So I understand the dilemma from both sides. The developer obviously wants to increase the density. What ends up happening typically is the utilities go in first. So you get all of your water, sewer, electric, gas, and all that get put in with the road right away. And so later on when the building is developed, if whoever is pouring the concrete pours it for the driveway on top of the water meter, so the service itself is underneath the driveway. The sewer service itself is under the driveway. If there's ever an issue, and it's usually not this year or next year or 5 years from now, it's 10 years from now or 15 years from now after it's been sold 2 times, and they show up and say, well, I've got to dig up an entire driveway to get to my water sewer service. Well, we catch these during construction. And so what happens is once it's built, we come out there and say, you poured this on top of it, you moved the driveway over, or you moved the lot lines over, something occurred. And what's always happens is we don't have any teeth to say move it, remove it, because at this point somebody's invested thousands and thousands of dollars on a lot. And so I think for the commission to acknowledge that, we would prefer 25 feet. In these instances where, you're talking about when you add the driveway, you've got a very small patch of grass. Our recommendation, if it has to go to 22 feet, would be to give us some teeth to say if it ends up in a driveway or in an area where there's a conflict, we have the back end of the commission to say move it. And I know that that's not perfect in anybody's world, but that's where we always end up in these situations, and that's the reason why I think it's doable.
All right. Mr. Bagwell, did you need to add something?
Well, I was going to just comment. I have no issue with his recommendation on adding some teeth. That's absolutely a responsibility I'm willing to take. And again, what we're willing to do is take an extra step in our engineering process and have our engineers take into account those driveway locations so that conflict doesn't occur. So our deal was to place those utilities at the property lines to avoid situations where the driveway intersects with the utilities.
Okay.
So, and I also want to add, just Brandon mentioned this earlier. From a development standpoint, this is a unique piece of property to develop. And also, we've run the numbers on this, going from 22 foot wide to 25 with the unit configuration. We're going to lose 4 to 5 units going to 25 foot, and the economics of the project kind of fall off the chart at that point. So it's a pretty critical number for me to achieve.
Thank you, sir. Chair recognizes the commissioner from the first. You still?
No, sir, I'm fine. I waive.
All right. So we're going.
I had one more comment.
All right. You want to wait for this sidebar comment? Okay.
I think and I'm sorry, I stepped away, had to confer about exactly what it is, because obviously they get constructed, and what happens is the home is constructed, then the driveway's poured. And so by the time you show up out there at the end, it can't just move one piece. I think, did you say that y'all would stake the driveways, or you would mark the driveways in the field with a surveyor?
We can. That's an option for us as well. But what we were going to do is show the driveways on the civil plan so that everything is accounted for from the very beginning of the project.
And I appreciate that. I think a lot of times it's still some leeways where the people that are actually constructing the homes don't construct them in the proper location, or they do an adjustment for a certain specific design, a new facade or something like that causes that adjustment. So I think for us, if we could have it staked in the field and then have an agreement that if it doesn't get constructed according to the plans, that it would be demoed and put back the proper way. Okay. I think we could all live with that. That way we don't transfer the costs and all to at the builder's expense, obviously. But what would be a normal item, but just making sure that everybody's covered in this case.
Yes, sir. I've got no issues with that.
Okay.
Okay. All right. We'll go through the queue. Commissioner from the 5th.
Yeah, Mr. Bynes. So we're still sticking with the 25?
If I may add a condition that could potentially resolve it or get us
go ahead.
there. So in addition, we would like to add a condition wherein installation of all utilities must be consistent with the civil plans as submitted. In addition to that, in the event that the plans and the installation are not consistent, the Engineering and Utilities Department reserves the right to request that the builder, at their expense, remove all improperly installed material.
And is that with 22 or 25?
At 22.
At 22. All right. So I withdraw my motion.
All right. Motion has been.
And the builder needs to agree to comply per.
You got to agree first. You got to shake your head.
You got to say yes.
Say yes.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Okay.
So,
and I'll get that motion worded and written.
all right. So I withdraw my motion.
All right. So, Madam Clerk, do we need that motion reread with the additions that we just discussed? Because we have a motion and a second.
Now, we have it, and we will note with the added conditions per the planning director and the utilities director. We can get it on the record.
All right. So
And let me say something very quickly, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Are you ready?
I'm ready. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just tired of you know, us building neighborhoods, and once we build it and somebody's been over there 2 or 3 years and they come back and say Augusta didn't do the right thing, when they let a builder build something, then they come back. You get folks like over in Elderberry who has one way in and one way out. And you got some other folks trying to build some stuff, and, you know, they want to build it their way. When you know 2, 3 years down the line, the people are going to have something else to say. They're glad to get their homes and what have you, but 2, 3 years down the line, they have a complaint when you don't build it the right way. So we're just trying to make sure things are built the right way. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner. Madam Clerk, Commissioner from the 5th has withdrawn the substitute motion. There's a motion on the floor for the main motion and a second.
So just for the record, the substitute motion was allowed to be withdrawn without objection?
Okay.
They can object. They'll
No,
be
it
fine.
belongs to the floor once it's made.
I'm just saying.
So we
There ain't
just
objections to removing the secondary.
trying to keep it clean. That's
No
all.
objections. All right, so we're back to the original motion.
motion. Yes,
which
sir.
has a second, and I think we're prepared to vote if there are no further discussions.
Okay.
All right, so let's vote.
Ms. Scott, yes, thank you. It's unanimous.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys for being here. Have a great rest of the day. This meeting's now closed.
Yes. Hey.
Things. James Scott on the next commission.